Schweitzer was a man of many talents and gifts, but the greatest mark he left was in the African jungle. Schweitzer was born French-German and began his adult life as a theologian, like his father and grandfather before him. In addition, he was also highly skilled at the organ and performed many concerts throughout his life. Shortly after he turned 21, Schweitzer made up his mind that he would allow himself 9 more years to selfishly enjoy his present lifestyle. After that, he would pay what he considered to be his debt to humanity. He would do this by devoting himself to a direct, lifelong personal service. What it would be, he wasn't sure yet, but he was confident that he would find that answer. 8 years later, he did just that. Quite by chance, while looking through a magazine one day, he turned to a report from the Paris Mission Society, which told of a miserable dilemma of the natives of Africa's Upper Congo that were due to the consequences of pain and disease suffered by them because of their lack of medical doctors that were willing to come and down and serve under such primitive conditions. Here, indeed, was a definite appeal and a definite need for these people. The more Schweitzer reflected upon it, the more it took hold of him. Thinking back to the experience, he described it with these words: "Out of the depth of my feeling of happiness, there grew up gradually within me an understanding that whoever is spared personal pain must feel himself called upon to help in diminishing the pain of others. This thought worked through me darkly and confusedly. Sometimes it left me so that I breathed freely and fancied once more I was to become completely the lord of my own life. But the little cloud that had arisen on the horizon at last filled the whole sky. It was a decision that puzzled and shocked his family, friends, colleagues, and former teachers. The dean of the medical school, upon hearing about his decision, just shook his head in disbelief and even advised Schweitzer to see a psychiatrist. It seemed evident that, for Schweitzer, he felt an obligation to pay back to the world his own debt of happiness, and this had become an obsession that could only be eased by the deeds he was to do. In his book, Out of My Life and Thought, he writes, "The true understanding of Jesus, the true relationship to him, is being taken possession by him. The dedication of his life to those who bear the mark of pain became Schweitzer's answer to Jesus' command in the book of Mark in the Bible to, quote-unquote, follow me." As he recounted to Norman Cousins many years later, "My decision is not the result of having heard the voice of God or any such fantasy, but a completely rational decision consistent with the pattern and projection of my life. I decided I would make my life my argument. I would advocate the things I believed in terms of the life I led and what I did." As was written in an article in History Today in 1953, Schweitzer was no soft-headed do-gooder, but a strong-minded, short-tempered workaholic who slept only 4 hours a night and whom people hesitated to cross. He and his wife Helen arrived in the Gabon province of French Equatorial Africa, where they built this hospital on the Ogowe River, in an area that was filled with malaria, dysentery, sleeping sickness, and leprosy. Until that hospital was ready, the first patients were treated in an old hen house. Treatment was free, but patients would also often bring a gift of eggs or poultry or whatever they had on hand or could afford to bring for payment. The only vehicle the hospital possessed for many years was simply a wheelbarrow. But the hospital's fame spread, and people came from great distances around by either canoe along the river or walking through the jungle and arriving exhausted and half-starved. By one estimate, by the time Schweitzer died, his hospital had treated 1.5 million African patients. Schweitzer's whole life was driven by the faith he had and his determination to live it out in his day-to-day life, not to just talk about it. He built his life around that mission, even though there was no money in it and he was in a very dangerous location. When I look at my own life and the faith I have and the plan I'm always trying to construct for that life, I know that there are places where my faith is displayed in the things I do, but also ways in which it could be a lot stronger. As I learned from the article in our textbook on Schweitzer, he funded his life work by writing books, lecturing, and playing organ concerts. None of these practices are highly lucrative or made him a lot of money, but he made it work to live the life he wanted so that others would be taken care of. Going to school myself for a business degree, there isn't a lot of obvious opportunities for caring for other people and showing my faith in the work that I do and God's love However, I know there are ways, and I need to make that a bigger part of my work to come and the life that I lead. I know I need to instill some faith in my plan. For the most part, it's just a long process of flying by the seat of my pants and hoping it all comes out in the end, but it should be more than that. As the Bible says in Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. My faith helps my critical thinking because it reminds me of what is important in life. I can't do it all on my own. If that were possible, people wouldn't be struggling so much as they flounder around trying to figure it all out. Knowing that there is purpose to my life, and that there's a plan so much bigger than my puny attempt at figuring it all out, this gives me peace. I don't have to have it all figured out. I just have to trust that God has a plan, and that it will all be okay. As stated in Jeremiah 29, verse 11, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. I can make as many plans for my life as I want, and I certainly do on a daily basis. But in the end, God's plan will win out. My job is to trust. Schweitzer trusted that God's plan for his life was a career change and a move to a new country. He embraced that plan, lived it to the fullest until the day he died. I want to live life like that, to the fullest, every day, trusting that God's plan is greater than anything I could ever devise on my own.